Undoubtedly, one of the most important issues that the president will focus on is the economy. Business will be looking for tangible solutions and definite timelines for reforms. Hard decisions will be needed to put the country on a sustained growth path. Ndumiso Hadebe is an economist at PAX Africana. He joins us now via Zoom. So is there anything, Ndumiso, that the president can say tonight that will reassure investors given our history?
Well, certainly. I think there are a number of opportunities that the president can leverage. You'd remember that last year, on the 15th of October 2020, there was a compact between NEDLAC, which is social partners between labor, government, and also business around South Africa's economic recovery and reconstruction plan. We have yet since to hear what that plan actually entailed, and that becomes quite critical in the president's address this evening in terms of what are his plans as it relates to South Africa's economic recovery plan. There are a number of sectors and also departments that are affected by this, because we'd also know that, for instance, the higher education of teaching and learning is also adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and there needs to be guidance and clarity in terms of what happens there. I think the importance of this plan as well also needs to highlight the developments and updates as to what is happening with respect to ESCOM and load shedding, and what is the plan, and are we still on track in terms of ensuring that we get ESCOM back on track again.
Yeah.
But of course, all of these efforts are intricately linked to the vaccine rollout and the strategy therein.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about the presidential employment stimulus plan. I spoke to a couple of analysts earlier. They were not too optimistic about government actually getting this right. We know that the Marshall Plan is to spend over 100 billion over 3 years to get young people working. What are you seeing in that regard, and do adjustments need to be made to actually get it right?
Indeed, I think certainly adjustments and trade-offs would have to be made, because at a strategic level, when looking at what allocation of resources are being allocated, it becomes a question of which resources are most efficient and most equitable to address. So from an equitable perspective, it presents an opportunity for young people that are perhaps unemployed and have not had exposure to working experience to be able to derive that benefit. However, it is important to note that it is a short-term mechanism, because it still does not address the structural blockages of the South African economy, which are or ought to be intended to ensuring that it's able to absorb new entrants into the labor market, from learners who matriculate or learners who come from the post-schooling opportunities, which is the higher education sector. And so that would have to be viewed from a short-term perspective, but with spin-offs that have to be targeted towards the medium to long-term, in line with the economic recovery and strategy plan that we are highly anticipating, that hopefully the president will touch on this evening.
You know, we always say that business needs to come to the party and help government out when it comes to economic growth. But given the lockdown and how it's impacted on businesses, it's going to be hard for that to happen.
It certainly is going to be hard for that to happen, and what is required then on the side of government is to ensure that there's a high level of coordination between all social partners. This is very important, primarily because, for instance, when it comes to a piece of legislation that we would anticipate in the budget later this month, which is, for instance, the investment incentive tax scheme, which is applicable in terms of the South African income tax, and for South Africans who would be able to have a 100% deduction by investing in South African small businesses. Those kinds of policy clarity or points of clarity becomes quite critical to ensure that business, as difficult or as tight as things are for business, they are also able to leverage some kind of opportunities within their sectors to take advantage of the policy and legislation opportunities that presently exist. And so clarity and developments in terms of such critical pieces of legislation that play a critical role in the stimulation and the growth of the economy becomes quite critical for the president to address today, but also later on this month for Minister Mboweni to also give the details on, so that business people and also other social partners can have a clear line of march in terms of what is the plan and coordinated plan going forward.
Very quickly, there has to be a level of certainty, right, for business to actually reinvest and for foreign investors to come back into South Africa. But that also will be very difficult to happen given COVID-19. Oh, that line has frozen. We're going to have to leave it right there. Ndumiso Hadebe, economist at PAX Africana.